I turned 100 this spring, and if there is one quiet habit that has followed me through the decades, it is this. I gradually learned to place more plants on my plate and less meat beside them. I did not do it because it was fashionable. In truth, when I was a young man, nobody used the phrase plant-based diet. We simply called it food that came from the garden. But as the years passed, I began to notice something. The more my meals leaned toward vegetables, beans, grains, and fruits, the lighter my body felt. My digestion became calmer. My energy lasted longer through the day. And slowly, without any dramatic decision, meat stopped being the center of my plate. Now listen carefully, because this is important. I did not abandon meat completely. That was never my philosophy. Instead, I reduced it, a smaller portion, less often, and in its place I welcomed more foods that grow from the soil: lentils, oats, leafy greens, beans, sweet potatoes, apples, nuts, and whole grains. At first it seemed like a small adjustment, but over many years, small adjustments become powerful habits. You see, plant foods carry things the body quietly depends on: fiber that feeds the digestive system, vitamins that support the immune system, minerals that strengthen the bones, and natural compounds that protect the heart. When these foods become the foundation of your diet, the body begins to operate more smoothly. And when meat becomes less frequent rather than dominant, the body often experiences something remarkable. Digestion becomes easier. Cholesterol levels tend to improve, and energy stabilizes instead of rising and crashing. So the secret I am sharing with you today is not extreme, and it is not complicated. It is simply this: eat more foods that come from plants. Reduce meat, not necessarily eliminate it. And over time, your body may thank you in ways you never expected. By the time a man reaches 100 years of age, he begins to see patterns in life that younger people rarely notice. Health is not usually shaped by one dramatic decision. It is shaped by small, repeated habits: what you eat in the morning, what fills your plate at dinner, and what becomes normal over the years. When I was a young man, meat was often treated as the centerpiece of every meal. A plate without it was considered incomplete. But in the countryside where I grew up, we did not always have large portions of meat available. Many meals came directly from the garden. Beans simmered slowly on the stove. Potatoes pulled from the soil that same week. Cabbage, carrots, onions, and fresh bread made from whole grains. At the time, we did not think of this as a health strategy. It was simply the way people ate. But as the decades passed, I began to notice something curious. The older people in our community, the ones who remained strong, active, and mentally sharp, often had one thing in common: their diets were rich in plant foods. They ate beans regularly. They filled their plates with vegetables. Fruit was a daily habit rather than a rare dessert. Meat was present, yes, but usually in smaller portions or eaten less frequently, Later in life, when scientists and doctors began studying nutrition more carefully, they started to explain what many of us had experienced quietly for years. Plant foods are naturally rich in fiber. Fiber is something the body needs but cannot digest completely. Instead, it passes through the digestive system and performs an important task. It supports healthy digestion and feeds beneficial bacteria in the gut. When your digestive system functions smoothly, your body absorbs nutrients more effectively and inflammation can remain lower. Meat, on the other hand, contains no fiber at all. This does not mean meat must be avoided completely, but it means that if meat dominates the diet, the body may miss an important element that plant foods provide. Another thing I noticed as I aged was how plant foods influenced energy levels. Meals built around whole grains, beans, vegetables, and fruits tend to release energy slowly. The body digests them gradually, which means blood sugar rises more steadily rather than sharply. When meals are balanced this way, a person often feels sustained energy rather than sudden fatigue. This becomes especially important as we grow older. Our metabolism changes with age. The body becomes more sensitive to spikes in blood sugar, and maintaining stable energy becomes a key part of maintaining overall health. Plant-rich meals help create that stability. There is also the matter of the heart. Over the years, doctors began to understand how diet influences cholesterol levels and cardiovascular health. Many plant foods contain compounds that help support healthy cholesterol levels, including soluble fiber found in oats, beans, lentils, and certain fruits. These foods gently help the body regulate cholesterol and support the health of blood vessels. When meat intake becomes excessive, especially certain types of processed or fatty meats, it can contribute to higher levels of saturated fat in the diet. For some people, that may influence cholesterol levels in ways that increase strain on the cardiovascular system. So reducing meat while increasing plant foods often shifts the nutritional balance towards something the body handles more comfortably. But let me make something very clear. The lesson is not that meat is the enemy. The real lesson is proportion. In my life, the healthiest approach was never about eliminating entire categories of food. Instead, it was about adjusting the balance of the plate. Imagine your dinner plate divided into sections, half of it filled with vegetables and plant foods, leafy greens, colorful vegetables, beans or grains, a smaller portion reserved for protein sources such as beans, lentils, nuts, or occasionally meat, and another portion containing whole grains or root vegetables that provide steady energy. When meals are arranged this way, something interesting happens. You naturally consume more fiber, more vitamins, more minerals, and more protective plant compounds, while still enjoying the foods you like. Over time, this shift can influence many aspects of health. Digestion often becomes easier because fiber supports regular movement in the digestive system. Many people notice that bloating and discomfort decrease when plant foods become more common. Weight management also becomes easier for some individuals. Plant foods, particularly vegetables and whole grains, often contain fewer calories relative to their volume. They fill the stomach while providing important nutrients, which can help people feel satisfied without overeating. But perhaps the most important change is something quieter. Plant foods contain thousands of natural compounds, antioxidants, polyphenols, and other plant chemicals that scientists are still studying. These compounds appear to help the body manage oxidative stress and inflammation. Over a lifetime, managing inflammation may play an important role in protecting the heart, brain, and many other systems of the body. I did not understand all of this when I was 30 years old, but I understand it now. Looking back across a century of life, I can see how small dietary habits accumulate into long-term consequences. The meals we repeat week after week become the foundation of our health decades later. When plant foods are common, the body receives nutrients that support resilience. When meat is enjoyed in moderation rather than excess, the body often maintains better balance. And this is why I tell younger people a simple truth that took me many years to fully appreciate. You do not need extreme diets. You do not need complicated rules. You only need to adjust the center of your plate. Let plants occupy more space. Let meat become a supporting role rather than the main character. When you do this consistently, not for a week, not for a month, but for many years, the benefits begin to accumulate quietly. Your digestion becomes steadier. Your heart may remain stronger. Your energy may last longer through the day. And most importantly, the habits you build today will continue shaping your health long into the future. At 100 years old, I have learned that longevity is rarely the result of dramatic changes. It is usually the result of small, wise decisions repeated across a lifetime. And one of the simplest of those decisions is choosing, again and again, to fill your plate with more foods that come from the earth. When a man has lived as long as I have, he begins to see that the body is not a machine that suddenly breaks one day. It is more like a garden. What you plant, what you water, and what you repeat season after season determines how that garden will look many years later. For most of my life, I never followed strict diet trends. I did not count every calorie. I did not chase every new nutrition theory that appeared in magazines. Instead, I slowly built habits that felt natural and sustainable. One of those habits was learning to make plant foods the foundation of my meals. You see, when vegetables, fruits, beans, and grains appear regularly on the plate, something interesting happens. The body receives a wide variety of nutrients that work together quietly behind the scenes. Leafy greens bring magnesium and folate. Beans offer plant protein and fiber. Fruits provide natural vitamins and protective compounds. Whole grains supply steady energy and nutrients that refined foods often lose. Over time, this variety becomes a kind of nutritional insurance for the body. I noticed that the people who ate a wide range of plant foods often had fewer digestive complaints. Their meals were colorful, varied, and rich in natural ingredients. They ate slowly, enjoyed simple food, and rarely relied heavily on highly processed meals. But perhaps the most surprising change that comes from eating more plant foods is the way it influences the digestive system itself. Inside every human body lives an entire community of microorganisms, bacteria that live in the gut. Scientists now call this the gut microbiome. When I was young, nobody spoke about such things. But modern research has revealed something remarkable. These microorganisms help break down food, produce certain vitamins, and influence many systems in the body, including the immune system. And what do these beneficial bacteria prefer to eat? Fiber, plant fibers from vegetables, fruits, beans, and whole grains act as nourishment for these microorganisms. When fiber intake increases, many of these helpful bacteria begin to thrive. When diets lack fiber, their numbers may decline. This is one of the reasons digestion often improves when plant foods become more common. A healthy digestive system does more than move food through the body. It helps regulate inflammation, supports immune defenses, and influences metabolic health. In other words, the food you eat does not only feed you, it feeds the ecosystem living inside you. Reducing meat intake can play a role in maintaining this balance. Again, I do not suggest eliminating meat entirely, but when meat becomes the dominant component of meals, fiber intake usually decreases. The body may receive protein and fat, but it may miss the fiber that supports the microbiome. When plant foods increase, fiber naturally rises, and the digestive environment often becomes more balanced. Another benefit I observed across the years involves weight stability. As people grow older, managing body weight can become more challenging. Metabolism slows, physical activity may decrease, and many individuals find it easier to gain weight than to lose it. Plant-rich meals often help address this issue naturally. Vegetables and whole grains contain significant volume but relatively modest calorie density. A plate filled with vegetables, beans, and grains can be satisfying while still providing balanced nutrition. This helps people feel full without constantly exceeding their energy needs. Over decades, maintaining a healthy weight becomes easier when meals contain generous portions of plant foods. But health is not only about digestion or body weight, it is also about the heart, the brain, and the many complex systems that keep the body functioning over time. Plant foods contain natural compounds called antioxidants and polyphenols. These substances help the body manage oxidative stress, a process that occurs when unstable molecules, often called free radicals, accumulate in the body. Oxidative stress has been associated with aging and with many chronic conditions. While no food can stop aging entirely, diets rich in plant foods provide compounds that help the body protect itself from excessive damage over time. This is why many doctors and researchers now encourage people to include a variety of colorful plant foods in their diets. The deeper the color of the vegetable or fruit, the more likely it contains beneficial plant compounds. dark greens, bright berries, orange carrots, purple cabbage. These colors often signal the presence of nutrients that support the body's defenses. Looking back across my life, I realized that many of the meals that supported my health were not complicated at all. A bowl of oatmeal in the morning with fruit, a plate of vegetables and beans with whole grains for lunch, a modest portion of meat occasionally at dinner, surrounded by vegetables, fresh fruit instead of sugary desserts most days. These habits were never extreme. They were simply consistent. Consistency is the real secret behind long-term health. Many people try dramatic diets for a few weeks and then abandon them, but the body responds far more strongly to habits that last for years. When plant foods become the normal foundation of meals, their benefits accumulate gradually. Digestion improves, energy stabilizes, nutrient intake becomes more balanced, and when meat becomes a smaller part of the diet rather than the center of every meal, the body often adjusts to a healthier rhythm. But perhaps the most valuable lesson I have learned is this: food should nourish both the body and the mind. Meals built around fresh vegetables, fruits, grains, and beans often encourage slower eating and a deeper appreciation of food itself. Preparing these meals connects people to the natural sources of nourishment, the soil, the seasons, and the rhythms of nature. That connection, simple as it may seem, reminds us that health does not come from complicated formulas. It comes from returning to foods that human beings have eaten for generations. And when those foods, especially plants, become the foundation of daily meals, the body often rewards that choice with resilience that lasts far longer than most people expect. At 100 years old, I can say this with quiet confidence. You do not need perfection. You only need a plate that leans gently toward the garden. When you live for a full century, you begin to understand that health rarely depends on a single miracle. It is not created by one perfect meal, one special supplement, or one dramatic decision. Health is built slowly, meal by meal, year by year, through habits that quietly support the body. One of the simplest habits I adopted over the decades was allowing plant foods to take a larger place on my plate. I did not force strict rules on myself. I did not declare that meat must disappear forever. Instead, I made a small but meaningful shift. I reduced how often meat appeared at the center of my meals and allowed vegetables, beans, fruits, and grains to become the foundation. That change may seem modest, but over time it created powerful results. Plant foods provided fiber that supported digestion. They brought vitamins, minerals, and natural compounds that helped the body function more smoothly. My meals felt lighter, my energy steadier, and my appetite more balanced. Meanwhile, enjoying meat in moderation allowed me to maintain variety without letting any single food dominate my diet. This balance became the key: more plants, less meat, not elimination, but proportion. If there is wisdom I can offer after 100 years of living, it is this: The body thrives on simple, consistent nourishment. The closer your meals are to foods that grow naturally from the earth, the more easily your body recognizes and uses them. So you do not need to change everything overnight. Begin with small steps. Add more vegetables to your meals. Include beans or lentils more often. Choose fruits and whole grains regularly. Let meat become an occasional companion rather than the main attraction. Over time, these small changes can shape your health in ways that are quiet, steady and lasting. And perhaps, if you are fortunate, they may help carry you further along life's road, just as they carried me.